So I've done a couple of videos kind of poking fun at the idea that Atomfall is the British Fallout because that couldn't be further from the truth. But there are some similarities between the games. I think there are far more differences than there are similarities, but what I wanted to do today was sort of dive into that discussion a little bit deeper and look at this from the perspective of what if you're someone who has never played Fallout before, you play Atomfall and you come away from this going, I'd like to see more of games like this. What are some other games that would be similar to this? Or maybe you're someone who has played Fallout in the past and heard that this is similar to Fallout, but then you watched some gameplay and went, wait a second, that's actually not like Fallout at all. Is there anything here that's like Fallout? And there are some similarities and differences, and that's kind of what I'd like to poke around at and discuss in today's video, kind of looking at what are the differences, what are the similarities, what are some of the things you could take away from between these two different games, even though they are very different. One is in terms of Fallout, the lore of the Fallout universe is all about the United States and what's going on there, and Atomfall is very much a British take on things in a much smaller environment because this takes place in the in the Lake District, and it's a very small patch of land compared to the breadth of what the United States has to offer, and that's where Fallout takes place. So, I think we could sort of set the stage with both of these games being um, set in an area where there has been some form of an experiment gone wrong. Now, in the Fallout setting, you're dealing with the wasteland, and that's sort of this whole concept of when you emerge from the bunkers, where players have been, where people have been living for, generations. They're emerging into this post-apocalyptic wasteland where everything has been mutated, and it's been so long since normal human beings have lived there that what's left is this nuclear fallout wasteland environment where it's all about exploration, resource management, crafting, combat, mutations, dealing with radiation, some of those survival themes. And when you look at Atomfall, it does share the aspects of exploration, resource management, crafting, and somewhat of some experiments gone awry, where there are, as an example, mutated rats and these aggravated bees that will come after you. But there's not a nuclear fallout. We can look around us here. I'm logged into Atomfall right now. And as you can see, this is not a nuclear fallout. This is not a nuclear wasteland. And that's sort of where the similarities end between looking at Fallout and Atomfall, because in Fallout, it's a very bleak landscape that's dominated by the fact that there's nothing there. It's all been irradiated. The difference might be Fallout 76, where you're in the Appalachians and the mountains have kind of grown back in some areas. But when you look at the overall storyline of the Fallout universe and the Fallout games, they mostly focus on that wasteland as opposed to this being the lush um, Lakes District in England. And yes, there is a nuclear facility here, or at least a scientific facility that featured atomic, experiments. But it's not even remotely the same thing when it comes to the fact that there is no wasteland to deal with in Atomfall. So you're not going to be navigating that, even though, yes, resource management is a thing in this game, and crafting and survival equals the same thing in both games. So that brings us to survival. There is survival aspects in both games, whether it is the fact that you need to have lots of radiation, medicine to help you survive in Fallout. You also have a similar system here where when you go in here and go into the crafting, you're creating things like your burn salves, combat stims, painkillers, but also this. There's poison tonics, and then there's this strange tonic which helps you deal with infection that you're going to come across. And this is not quite the same thing as radiation, but it is similar in the sense that both games feature you needing to use food and drink and consumables to survive the afflictions that you're going to be facing while you're roaming around in the environments, whether it's the wasteland of Fallout or the Lakes District here in Atomfall. So from that perspective, both games feature environmental storytelling that gives you a reason for why the landscapes are the way they are. They also provide you with lots of things around the environment to explore and pick up and use to craft and help you with your survival. So it's, from the setting, the setting might not really be that similar, but you can look at the exploration, and there's this aspect of environmental storytelling and survival as sort of being similar between the two games. And they both feature crafting, but the big difference here is that, as an example, especially if you go back to like the more recent Fallout games with Bethesda, offers in Fallout 4, Fallout 76, base building is a big function of those games, and there is no base building in Atomfall. So that's where sort of, even though there is crafting of things like foods and drinks, or bandages and tonics in this case, you're not going to be building bases and things of that nature in Atomfall, even though you might be in Fallout. Then this brings us to the exploration and action of the two different games. So we talked about this in one of my very first parody videos. The fact that Fallout features the Pip-Boy first and foremost, the Pip-Boy on your wrist, and then through the Pip-Boy you have access to the VATS system, which is where you can basically turn it into a turn-based or slow it down so that it's very slow, and you can specifically target um, parts of the body on the mobs. That does not, you don't have that here. All you have are your variety of weapons, and in this case, I've got a bow, an arrow, I've got an axe, I've got a pistol, I've got various things. In this case, I've got a rifle that I can use, but I can also switch over and go to like my pistol. I can go over to my bow and arrow, which is what I use for a lot of stuff because I'm doing the stealth-based gameplay. And then outside of that, I've also got like a shotgun that I keep in the background, and then I've got my cricket bat, which actually this is the perfect moment for me to show off the amazing cricket bat that I got from Rebellion for the in the creators kit, which is really cool. This is great for dealing with trolls when they come on stream. Anyway, so when you start looking at the combat between the two games, as far as the action goes, it's completely different. Both games do feature stealth. Like I'm running around stealthily hidden in the grass right now, but the gunplay in this game, the combat in this game is completely different than Fallout. This is all real time, whereas Fallout has the VATS system, which allows you to use your Pip-Boy to target specific body parts and go from there. So I would say that exploration might be the same, and they both feature action, but I would say the combat in Fallout is much slower paced than it is in Atomfall because you can slow it down with the VATS system, as opposed to here where it's always in real time. Also, when you start looking at Fallout 76, or not Fallout 76, but just the Fallout franchise in general, you have stats, the special stats, strength, perception, intelligence, etc., 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 and there are no stats in Atomfall. You're just a person, and you go out there and you have these weapons that you come across in the field. And quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload, or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. In the Fallout universe, you actually have stats which you can adjust as you level up your character, because it's more of a classic RPG as opposed to this being more of a crafting survival game out of the box. I think that's another area where they kind of separate into two distinct different games, because with Fallout you have a lot of character customization that you could do, which you don't get in this game. And I think when you start to do the comparative analysis between Fallout and Atomfall, you're going to start to find that there are more contrasts than there are similarities. I think we talked about it in the parody video. The thing that I think is most similar between these two games is that in both of these games you wake up in a bunker. In both Fallout and this game, you wake up in a bunker. The difference is that in Fallout, generally speaking, you're in a vault where where the people have been living for generations, depending on which game you're playing. As opposed to here, no one has been living here for generations. You wake up in a vault and you find out that the story here has been taking place over the past few years. So there's only, I believe it's been, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's 5 years have passed between the events that happened and where you come into play here in Atomfall. So it's not this generational thing. So that's kind of, in my mind, that's where the similarities begin and end. Although you can see that you can draw similarities between both of these games if you dig deep enough into the gameplay styles. There are nuclear or atomic facilities in both. This one does feature Atomfall features atomic, like the robots have atomic batteries in them, and if you go to Fallout, the um, the suits of armor as well as robots also feature nuclear cores, the reactor cores or fusion cores, I think is what they're called. That's a crossover that is similar in scope, but again, it's the difference between one being the wasteland and this not. And I think that's the other confusing thing here is there was the word post-apocalyptic thrown around. I think post-apocalyptic definitely applies to Fallout, but does not apply to Atomfall per se. Um, and I think there's also the scope. This takes place in a very small area of England in the Lake District, and obviously there are multiple zones that you can explore here. But Fallout, generally speaking, takes place over much larger areas, and in some cases, like Fallout New Vegas, it's extremely large areas. So, when it comes down to looking at which of these games might be the one that suits you the most, I would say you should try both of them. You're going to get a much more streamlined experience with Atomfall, although there is a lot of replayability with the game. Whereas any of the Fallout games, especially if you're talking about the most famous, which is Fallout 4, or even the MMO version Fallout 76, but going back to Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, etc., those games can get into hundreds of hours per playthrough, especially if you start including DLCs. And with Atomfall, it's a much more concise experience that's been focused on one area. Now you could do a lot of replayability with Atomfall, but there are multiple endings and things of that nature. But I think you're going to get far more variety when you start looking at the Fallout games, especially because that's a franchise that's been around for a lot longer, and they've got more games in the series compared to Atomfall, which just launched, and hopefully we're going to get more. I'm very interested to see what Rebellion is going to bring out around this game now that it's out the door, and seems to be quite successful. So that's my take, sort of a deep dive on Fallout versus Atomfall. Do with it as you will. Love to hear your thoughts if you enjoyed Fallout or if you enjoyed Atomfall. Drop those comments down below, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next stream, which happens every single day at around 5 a.m. Central on YouTube and Twitch. I play a lot of games. There's obviously like over 7,500 videos here in the YouTube channel, and we do a lot of different things, talk about a lot of different stuff, so hopefully we'll see you in the next one. So stay safe and happy gaming.